Good morning, good afternoon, HubSpot Nation, LinkedIn friends. Welcome to a new year of Let's Build HubSpot websites with Anton. Happy 2025, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to see you.
Yes, you as well. I've missed I've missed all of my fellow HubSpot coaches
So,
and hosts. But we made it through the holiday season. And I had a lot of fun with AI, of
it was a
course,
break.
and
Yeah.
um, really, probably a little too much fun, honestly. And so glad that I get to be with you today because um, while I'm having fun, I'm also noticing a lot of the gaps that still exist. And
Hmm.
while it can be very
Yeah.
easy to just put up a nice looking website page quicker than ever before, um, I wanted to go through the gaps with you uh, because it still gets to the heart of what we usually talk about, right? And that's like these sites
Yeah.
don't build themselves, and without strategy and without like having goals, right? Like what are you actually doing? What are you actually publishing?
Yeah.
So
So,
I wanted to start with I'll show uh, the good people what I'm talking about in terms of me as a non-developer, you know, um, even diehard HubSpot CMSer,
hmm
uh, what I've been up to, um, and then we can kind of break it down. So this is a website I built last weekend, um, and I don't know how many pages I'm up to now. Uh, Maybe 40 or 50, I think. Like the whole goal is to, teach people about the HubSpot data model and, things like that. So just informational.
hmm
Um, and this is an example page. You see a normal, you know, domain here. None of the like, a lot of the website builders or code builders have like these, bridge domains where you can just put stuff up, really quickly um, from like a subdomain perspective. So really fun just to like see what AI images are generated. Um, there is a way to build consistency, but often that's something you kind of got to give up on, like when you're relying on AI to do this stuff for you. But ultimately, just this first step of making it visual uh, is fun, right? But as we think about the website from a bigger perspective, right, which is like the goal, if my goal is to, teach about like the HubSpot data model and moving from point solutions to customer platform, like what do I need to do to successfully, do that beyond just making some pretty pictures and pages that aren't connected, to each other. Um, Behind the scenes, this is what that looks like, and it's as simple as just adding a page and pasting in some text, which came from this Google Doc, and hit a couple buttons, and then we have this page, right? uh, so while it looks pretty easy, and I say that I built it over a weekend, this was after doing an extensive amount of content creation with Claude, where there's a whole custom instructions that we figured out, basically the strategy and the theme and all these things like happen first, like who the audience is, like all these things that we're
hmm
going to talk about today. um were co-authored, right, we'll say with Claude, and then now it's has so my last weekend, when I say built, it's putting all these documents like
Yeah.
onto pages, right? So um, that's the gist. And I want to start with like these basic gaps, right? Because like I said, it can be very visual, but an example right now is I cannot add a search, I can add a search to the website right now very easily, right? And so for very easily for me means there's no, like I'm looking for a module somewhere that automatically includes it, or a checkbox to say just add it. I'm not here to design or develop HTML. You can do that in some spots, but not in most.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the foundation, right? And so let's go over, or like I'd love to see hear your experience, because I know you've been, working with some AI tools, some more developer
Yeah.
focused tools to build out more sophisticated websites. And I don't want to sell AI short. I never do, right? It's moving very fast, and
Yeah.
it can do some pretty amazing things with websites very quickly. What is it
Yeah.
not doing yet?
Um, so as you, I have been playing with AI, and as you've mentioned, more the developer focused ones in the last couple of weeks, months. And I mean, to be fully honest, it helps quite a lot, right? Because now I'm in a position where I can have an idea, and instead of let's say just writing code, doing some research, because maybe I don't know how to code that, what I have in mind. It's like, okay, hey, AI tool X, I have an idea for something and help me create this, right? So, a super simple example, yesterday, Dennis, Toon, and I were just brainstorming about our developer hug. And it was just a brainstorm, right? And I had this idea like, okay, how about we generate some 8-bit graphics, because Dennis is a big fan of that, right? And you have to automate this every time. So I've just prompted the uh I've just prompted like, okay, hey AI, I need a super simple app where I will be able to upload an image, and I need a JavaScript that will convert the uploaded image to an 8-bit graphics with the look and feel of the old Game Boy. Like the two greenish color version, like this kind of thing. And I had the result in under 5 minutes. Like a working thing in under 5 minutes. Is it perfect? No. But does it work? Yes. Right? And before that, I would assume that any developer out there would have spent at least 1 hour. At least. Right? And that's like, okay, super simple app, super simple example, but yeah,
And
right?
I would imagine also there's, like, you get to skip over, like, maybe you would have mocked up some stuff in Figma,
Yeah,
and right, like this design process. So I do agree that, like, going, like, the ideation phase no longer has to be kind of like static, like it's been, where you just,
yeah,
everything requires some effort and some work. Being able to create proof of concepts in a matter
yeah,
of minutes is so powerful, because sometimes you get to the proof of concept and you're like, okay, it's not gonna work, right?
yeah.
And how many hours would you have spent previously getting to that
Hmm.
point? um so what else have you discovered while you're working with these tools?
I mean, I'm discovering quite a lot. And on one hand, on the one hand, I would say AI is great for learning new stuff, right? So if you're if you're just starting development, or anything basically, AI can be a amazing teacher. And I would also throw in like maybe a better teacher than Google, right? But on the other hand, it's like AI won't replace you as a human, right? And once you get to the point where you don't build, like, let's call it just virtual cards, like, hey, this is my phone number, this is my address, and this is my email, call me, right? Once you get past this point, and you will get into things like, who's my buyer persona, like who am I focusing on, who should I tailor my content, my website to or on. This is the point where AI won't work, at least in my opinion. And the next step, or the other thing, and this is also something that I see coming in the next maybe 1 or 2 years, search engines will have a really hard time. Because, as mentioned, a lot of people, including myself, are just prompting something like, hey, I want to learn XYZ. And before the big AI explosion, I would say, like 1 or 2 years ago, everybody was Googling, like, hey, I need XYZ and give me all the sources. And now it's changing, though. So people or their behavior is changing how they will get all the information, right? And those are two things where I think, like, AI will replace, or yeah, like, will replace some things, and on the other hand, won't replace some things,
Yeah.
right?
No, I'm glad you brought up the SEO thing. Um, because that's where it's even using this tool, like the two things that I wish like I could do with it already are
Yeah.
like for organizational purposes, I can't go more than one folder, more than one subfolder, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
just very flat, one slash after the website. And two, um, as it builds all those cards, every title is an H1.
Okay.
And what comes to mind is like there's so many technical SEO practices
Yeah.
that for me are called into question now, because if AI only has to look at the page, all these things that we used to do to serve the Google algorithm so that the Google that it could
Yeah.
understand structure and information on a page, like do we need some folders and navigation and H1s, H2s, H3s if it's visually if it visually makes sense on a page, right? I'm gonna ask the Gamma team about that specifically, because that part, the fact that it makes a bunch of H1s
Mm-hmm.
feels like a miss.
Yeah.
But maybe they could be way out ahead of this stuff too. So
I mean, this is an interesting point. All the H tags and alt tags and so on, right? Those were done for search engines, not for humans, right? Because most people won't see the source code, except developers and tech savvy people who like to look at the code. But for most of people, code is like, nope, I don't want to look at that, right? So in terms of, I would say, structure, H tags, I think will still be important in the future. Maybe it will change in a way like the next evolution could be, and I mean, it's just an idea, like that the search engine or the AI will also recognize all the CSS styling that is coming along with the headline. So, for instance, if the headline has an H1 tag but is only the size of, let's say, the paragraph, maybe this could lead to something that the AI or search engine will recognize. Okay, it's an H1, but it's the size of the paragraph, so maybe it's not that important, right? Maybe, I don't know, but this could be something, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
could become something.
Yep. So I'd say, like, if you're out there playing with these tools, at least, like, often I usually try to stop and wonder why, like, AI is not doing it in a very well-known, like, accepted way of doing the thing, whatever it is. In this case, we're talking about SEO. Before you get mad at the AI or get frustrated with it, and then try to craft all these prompts, frameworks to try and get there. Like all of the, I think there must have been like 1,000 like blog prompts right off the bat when people started using
Yeah.
GPT, like SEO optimized, blah blah blah. Right. Take a step back and say, well, maybe AI is not doing it because it doesn't need to do it to understand the content. But let's get into this list of 5 things. I think we've been dancing all over the first one, and we probably don't need to go much deeper. But the strategic understanding and vision for what you're trying to accomplish, with the website, including brand identity, who we're talking to, what the goal is, things like that. Like, it will execute stuff once you tell it all that information. But very unlikely to create like authentic strategic direction, for you right
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think aligned with that, number 2, this kind of emotional intelligence and creating connection with the audience through your user experiences, that you're generating. How would you? I think on your list you had, complex emotional nuances. How are you thinking about that as you continue to build out websites?
I would say, like, as mentioned, once you get past the point where you say, hey, this is my website and call me, right? So a very, very old approach for websites from the 1900s.
Transactional.
Yeah, like very, very basic. Um, you need to increase the interactions, to increase maybe sales, maybe something else you're looking for. You need to light the fire, I would say, in the visitor, right? So, for instance, if we take a look at the Apple website, right? So I would assume that everybody knows the Apple website. It's super clean and it's like very straightforward. And what Apple does is they don't say, "Hey, we sell an iPhone, we sell a MacBook, we don't sell iPads, uh, Apple Watches, whatever." They're selling you some sort of um,
Experience.
ideology, I would say. Like, with the new iPhone, you will have a better camera at your fingertip, for instance, right? So they don't say buy our new iPhone to have uh, a better camera, because cameras they don't improve that much, right? So it's also some sort of how you create the wording for something, and this is very important because mm, while AI can create text for you, it does not know who's your audience unless you invest quite some time in uh training it. Like, hey, I have this buyer persona, I have this. Like, you can train AIs, yes, but it's a difference. uh and yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point because again, and probably all of these come back to the greater strategy of what you're trying to accomplish with your website. Because this goes back to like, oh man, every leader that's never done a great
Yeah.
website before, and then all of a sudden they're like, let's build brand and let's look at Apple's website and
Yeah.
just do what they're doing. Well, they can do this because there is an entire brand experience happening with the products that the people know and love and will go to war for, right? If that's not behind this, then what the hell are you? This doesn't mean anything, right? But because that experience is there, which has been built
Yeah.
out over decades, they can keep it minimal and really like hone in on that emotional like experience that they're trying to provide through this and that they do provide. And like it builds on itself, right? So understanding the website in the midst of the entire business strategy is another thing that unless you build like your own LLM, like in the process, basically, like it's going to be
Yeah.
very hard for AI will either like without a lot of that, it can still give you a page like this. But if it doesn't understand like what's behind it, like good luck on these words like mattering, right? Or it'll overwhelm with text and visuals because it doesn't understand that a lot of that stuff is already happening, in other places of the business.
Yeah.
So that is a good call out for sure. Uh, number 3, strategy from a different perspective as far as like, um, are we building a sustainable, website? Is the code that AI is generating right now, is it going to be easy to, build on and modify later? Are we building tech debt as we throw all this stuff on a page? How does it approach that right now?
So I would say it all depends on what you are building. Because if you're building just a static website, or I mean, in a more or less static environment, and you know that, hey, I need just a quick solution for something and I will rework or redo everything later. So just start quite fast, and then as time goes on, you can evolve. I would say you don't need to think about that much of, let's call it just sustainable or sustainability of the code, because if you already know that you won't update it or you won't maintain it, it's just a quick shot and okay, I need something online. Don't think about that, right? But on the other hand, if you are going into all the itsy bitsy tiny things, and I went there a few months or a few weeks ago, uh, it's getting quite a mess very, very fast, because AIs tend to forget things that they have suggested you. And it's like, okay, I need some code for, let's say, a button. Okay, cool. Here's a code for a button. And I'm like, okay, but we already have the code for the button in a different place. Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry. Then let's just swap things around, right? And I was like, if I would be somebody who wouldn't be a developer who knows what he's doing, this person would create a bunch of or unnecessary code, which also would relate or potentially end in a thing where there would be a bloated code, which also be a result of a slow page performance, right? So if it's just a quick shot and you don't want to think about sustainability, go, right? But if you know what you do and how you want to do that, maybe change it in the future, you also have to think about that and tell the AI about that right from the start, because I I just played around with an AI, and I was like, okay, I want to build X, and let's go with the atomic design approach, which I've mentioned a few weeks ago. And I want to have it like A, B, C, D. Like I provided the whole idea and the whole structure and everything, and I told the AI why I want that. And I also told the AI like, okay, please remember that for the time of the whole project. And this is also something that I've noticed for at least developer AIs. Telling the AI like, please remember that is quite helpful.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
It can be for sure. In theory, they have perfect recall, but
Yeah.
not so much in practice yet.
Nope.
They'll remember as soon as you remind them, kind of, again, here we are, not dissimilar from some human relationships you probably have in your life. Somebody who forgets what just happened yesterday. Um, uh, you brought up an excellent one that's probably a while before we solve for this, because we already know that there's biases from the human training data related to stereotypes and inclusive and exclusive, just behavior from the human race in general has been brought into AI. So your number 4 of guaranteeing ethical or inclusive practices, it's not doing that for you, like, for sure.
Yeah.
So how are you trying to, so I would imagine there's got to be a way to get it to help with
Yeah,
that though still. Like how do you approach, because I know there's a new regulation now uh in the EU, right? Regarding websites
really?
and accessibility, right?
Oh, it's coming. Yeah,
It's
it's
coming.
coming
Okay.
in, I think, June or July, something like that. Like, we have a few months, but yeah, like accessibility will become a huge topic in the EU later this year. And I mean, AI is not that. I mean, you can train it. And as you've mentioned, you can create a whole LLM for that, your own LLM. But if you don't tell the AI what you want to have, it won't do it. Because AI is, I wouldn't say dumb, but it's just a thing that will do what you tell it to do. Like, give me a font color. Okay, random color code, right? You can, of course, you can say, like, okay, I want a perfectly readable color for, I have a background color X and I want to have a perfectly visible in any circumstances color thing, right? But for me, as a designer, not a developer, I have completely different tools that I use to generate perfect color combinations, and I don't use AI for that because it's something that I would say, learned, and it's easier for me instead of just prompting things out, and I know how to calculate colors, right? So why should I um, use the AI for that and spend a lot more time on that, right? Ethical and inclusion. Sure, the AI won't do that for you because, as mentioned, AI will always do only that thing that you are requesting, because we are far from the point where AI will, I would say, think itself, right? So right now AI is only generating, so it's a generative AI. So yeah,
Yeah. This is where like
it's yeah.
you can take some of these regulations, and I
Mm-hmm.
meant like what's coming to mind is like you create a project in Claude or GPT or wherever, Perplexity, just put that regulation in there, whatever, whichever
Mm-hmm.
one it is that you want to follow. And then all it is just feed whatever the page looks like or whatever page you're planning, put it into that specific project, and it'll do like a, review, right? Um, and that's where, even though when it's up to date or like Perplexity searches the web live, right? Unless you're calling its attention to the specific thing that you want to target, it can be very hit or miss as far as like which regulation, which accessibility standard is it gonna look at,
Mm-hmm.
or which inclusion strategy is it gonna try to take, because that's where, just like there's regulations in the training data, there's also a lot of strategic and commentary
Yeah.
content that is weighted as well. um, and that's where we get to this last one, the authentic human connection. Still not doing that.
Nope. And it will take quite a time until AI will be able to fully replace a human being. I mean, it can talk in a very similar human way right now, but again, it will mostly just react to some input, right? So we all know that, for instance, ChatGPT has a voice model for months, I think. Like, yeah, and
Yep.
it's not bad. It's great. It understands a lot of languages, and you can have some sort of human-like conversations with that, but it won't replace you as a human, right? And
Yeah. No, this is where like understanding the audience and the goals of the website is just
yeah,
so important.
yeah,
And like, because the points that we're using agents right now, um, I think for me, if you know the audience at that point in time is just in fix it mode, like fix it as fast as possible mode, that's when they're happy to talk to an AI customer agent that can just point
yeah,
them to the knowledge base article, give them like the quick 3 steps to fix it. But if the human is in exploration mode or research mode or learning mode,
hmm,
especially on the sales side,
yeah,
and the first thing that they hit is a prospecting bot that's going to ask budget, authority, timeline questions. Like it's going to force them down your throat too. Like, is that the best time to introduce? Like that for me should be that's the human connection time, right? That first impression. So it's interesting on where businesses and also products, and usually products are developed because it's what the businesses say they want, right? How do we get more leads in the door? Let's make a bunch of SDR bots. But that first impression, that's where if you do the work to create a great website experience, learning experience, and then you miss that moment of human connection, you think AI can do that part for you, you will not, at least until 26 or 27, you're not going to see,
yeah,
good results because it's not, um, it's still not doing that work for you. And you shouldn't want it to, right? Like that's
yeah,
when you start building the relationship. You should build everything else around that moment. And then you can actually put people in a position to be successful on both sides of that conversation.
yeah.
Uh, any bonus tips on your mind as people think about how they use AI to support websites in 25?
So, as for now, because we don't know what will the evolution be in the next couple of months, I would say using AI as some sort of helping hand is great, right? And you can learn with it, from it, but don't assume that AI will replace you, right? And don't be afraid of, oh no, AI will replace human beings. No, at least not in the next couple of years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, get in there and try it. And um, yeah, don't fear it. It's the biggest boon right now for anybody who's willing to understand how to work it in to their process so that it's so that they can make time for all this human connection, emotional impact, inclusivity, all the stuff that you've been wanting to do. as a business
Yeah.
or as a practitioner. Now you have time to do. Now you have the time to do it if you let AI handle a lot of the stuff that it can handle. So that's why we wanted to take the time to kind of create this list, focus on like, it's almost like a pros and cons, list if you want to look at that way for using AI in website development. But yeah, this has been fun, man. Glad to see you survived to 2025.
Yeah.
And if you're watching this and you found it valuable, we hope that you did. Think about your website strategy for 2025. Find those opportunities and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.
A great one.